Yes, good morning, all of you. Nice to see you all again. Yeah, so last session we started off with the topic called as respiration in plants. We talked very basic aspects last session. First, we talked about the concept of ATP formation, adenosine triphosphate, and we remember one ADP and one IP has in it 7.3 kilocalories of energy stored to form a molecule of ATP. So whenever glucose breaks, it releases energy, 686 kilocalorie, of which 7.3 kilocalorie gets trapped between ADP and IP to form a molecule called as ATP. और ऐसे 38 ATPs बनते हैं. And then we talked about differences between aerobic and anaerobic respiration. Chalo, so that was very basic. Today we start with the crux of the chapter, the main part of the chapter, the concept of actual breakdown of glucose. Glucose breaks down in 3 steps. You may remember that. The first step is called as glycolysis. The second step is something called as acetylation. And the third step is called as Krebs cycle. So sugar breaks down in 3 steps. First is called as glycolysis. Glycolysis is the first step. And glycolysis takes place in the cytoplasm of a cell. The next step is something called as acetylation. Acetylation starts in the cytoplasm and is completed in the mitochondria. So it is the connecting step. And the third step is called as Krebs cycle. And Krebs cycle takes place in the mitochondria. So once again, what is the first step called? Glycolysis. Where does glycolysis take place? In the cytoplasm. What is the second step called as? Acetylation. Where does acetylation take place? Starts in the cytoplasm, completes in the mitochondria. And the main step is the final step where maximum energy is released. That step is called as Krebs cycle, and Krebs cycle takes place inside the mitochondria. So chaliye, today we talk of first step called as glycolysis. Glycos means sugar. Lysis means splitting. So the breakdown of sugar is called as glycolysis, and it is taking place in the cytoplasm. Glycolysis was first schemed, made by 3 scientists, Embeden, Meyerhoff, and Parnas. These 3 scientists, Embeden, Meyerhoff, and Parnas, gave the schematic representation of glycolysis, and hence it is called as the EMP pathway. After Embedden, Meyerhoff, and Parnas, it is rightly called as the EMP pathway. Where does glycolysis take place? It takes place in the cytoplasm of a cell and is found in all living organisms. So, all living organisms, prokaryotes like bacteria and eukaryotes, humans, plants, animal, सब के अंदर होता है glycolysis, which means it is common in both aerobic as well as anaerobic respiration. If you remember, prokaryotes like bacteria show anaerobic respiration and humans, plants, animals, they show aerobic respiration. दोनों में common step कौन सा है? Common step in both of them is glycolysis. Glycolysis is common for both aerobic and anaerobic respiration. What is the essence of glycolysis? In this process called glycolysis, glucose, C6H12O6, undergoes partial oxidation. ग्लूकोज पूरा नहीं टूटता है ग्लाइकोलाइसिस में, पार्शियली टूटता है and forms two molecules of a chemical called as pyruvic acid. 3 carbon pyruvic acid. तो ग्लूकोज 6 कार्बन का है and glycolysis means breaking of glucose. And what does 6 carbon glucose do? Breaks down to form 2 molecules of 3 carbon compounds, which is called as pyruvic acid. तो pyruvic acid बनता है. How many carbon in pyruvic acid? 3 carbon. Pyruvic acid में कितने कार्बन है? Pyruvic acid is a 3 carbon pyruvic acid. And how will this process actually take place? ध्यान से सुनिएगा. In plants, photosynthesis produces starch. Starch produces sucrose. So plant में जब respiration होता है, what is produced by photosynthesis? Starch. But starch during respiration becomes sucrose. And sucrose, in the presence of an enzyme called as invertase. You remember I have taught you in the digestion also. Sucrase is called as invertase. So plants में sucrose is broken down by invertase to form glucose and fructose. So what does sucrose break down to form? Glucose and fructose, of which fructose undergoes a process called as isomerization to form glucose. What is the meaning of word isomer? Fructose is chemically C6H12O6 and glucose is also C6H12O6. तो दोनों में ग्लूकोज फ्रक्टोज दोनों में कार्बन 6 है, हाइड्रोजन 12 है, ऑक्सीजन 6 है, but arrangement of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen is different. तो फ्रक्टोज की रिंग होती है, उसमें कार्बन, हाइड्रोजन, ऑक्सीजन डिफरेंट होता है. ग्लूकोज के अंदर सेम नंबर ऑफ कार्बन, हाइड्रोजन, ऑक्सीजन, C6H12O6, but arrangement is different. fructose cannot undergo glycolysis. So what will sucrose do in the presence of invertase? Sucrose, which we remember is a disaccharide, will become monosaccharide glucose and monosaccharide fructose, of which glucose can undergo glycolysis, but fructose cannot undergo glycolysis. So fructose क्या करेगा? Undergoes a structural change. उसके कार्बन हाइड्रोजन ऑक्सीजन rearrange हो जाते हैं and it forms a molecule called glucose, and that rearrangement of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen is a phenomenon called as isomerization. याद रखना, आपको ये केमिस्ट्री में भी काम आएगा. What is fructose changing its carbon, hydrogen, oxygen arrangement to form glucose called as isomerization. So one monosaccharide, fructose, has isomerized to form another monosaccharide, glucose. Now we are having two glucose molecules. पहला सुक्रोज से ग्लूकोज बना था, सुक्रोज से ग्लूकोज और फ्रक्टोज बना था, और फ्रक्टोज से अब और एक ग्लूकोज बन गया. So eventually we are having one molecule of glucose directly produced and one molecule of glucose produced by isomerization. Thus two molecules of glucose are present, and both glucose molecules will now undergo the process called as glycolysis. In animals, starch खाया जाता है. हम लोग जब पोटैटो, आलू, ब्रेड खाते हैं, starch is eaten. Starch, we remember, in the presence of alpha amylase, which is produced first by saliva, 30% starch is broken, and then by pancreas, amylase, 70% starch is broken. What does starch become? Maltose. ये तो हमने किया digestion में. And maltose in the presence of maltase becomes glucose. Thus, glucose from both plants and animals undergo glycolysis in the cytoplasm to form pyruvic acid, and two molecules of pyruvic acid are successfully produced. So we will now see how glycolysis actually takes place.